My husband's mom asked him to promote her OF at work and even sent him explicit photos to help, and now the entire family is blowing up our phones wondering why we cut her off. My mother-in-law, 40F, has always been very open about lovemaking. When I first met my husband, she managed an adult toy store, and about a year ago she started working towards a degree on intimate health and wellness. She nude models for a local artist, and around a month ago she started an OnlyFans account. Her openness about this subject has always been an extraordinarily normal thing for her. I have absolutely nothing against her working in this industry. That's her forte, and I'm happy that she's doing well and enjoying what she does. However, I've had some slight concerns about it before. Not specifically her working in this industry, or her openness in general, more so how open she is. Especially with her own kids. For example, my husband and I started dating in high school, when she was managing the adult toy store. When she would come home from work, she would stop into my husband's, boyfriend at the time, room, and hand us sample sizes of different lubes and sensation creams saying I thought you guys might want to try some of these. It always made us both pretty uncomfortable, and it was extremely awkward to have my boyfriend's mom hand me things to try intimately with her son. But, nonetheless, the most conversation that my husband and I ever had about it back then was about how awkward it was. Awkward and uncomfortable enough that we never actually used these things. They just piled up on a shelf by his bed. Another time while we were dating, fresh out of high school, we were hanging out with his sisters. His mom was still working at the toy shop. Once in a while, she would come home with silly toys, and on this night, she walked in with a 1-foot-long glittery schlong toy. She playfully whipped it around towards us like a sword. His sisters screamed and ran from her, and for a while we all laughed and had fun about it. Snatching it from one another and chasing each other around with the glitter schlag. Eventually, my husband's sister, 17 at the time, said something like, "Mom, you better not have brought that home to use. That's crazy." My husband chimed off in ew, saying he didn't need to think about that. And his mom laughed and replied, "Oh no, that's silicone. You know the toys I use are glass." Again, my husband made a weird face but didn't say anything. When we got to his room, I said that it was weird that his mom talked to her children about what she uses to get her rocks off, and he told me that she's always been way too open about things that none of them wanted to know, but that she's always been this way, so he's just gotten used to tuning it out. As time went on, I got used to the openness. And it was just that, being too open about personal stuff within conversation. However, yesterday the openness went too far. My husband and I were sitting in our living room watching TV. My husband got a text from his mom and opened it, and had a visceral reaction. He tossed his phone down, stood up, walked away from it with his hands over his face, while saying things like "oh my god" and "holy crap" under his breath. Naturally I thought that someone had died, so I started frantically asking what was wrong. All he said was that he didn't even want to open his phone again. I asked again what was wrong, and he told me that his mom just sent him pictures. I was confused. I asked what he meant by pictures, and he hesitated before saying, "I don't want to ask you to look, but I can't open it back up to delete it myself, so I need you to." My stomach dropped. I opened his phone to see what was there, and I immediately felt nauseous. There was a text that read, "Hey, I know you've always supported me and I wanted to see if you'd be willing to subscribe to my OF so that I can get my numbers up while I'm still getting started. Of course I don't expect or want you looking through it, but the more subscriber numbers I have, the more engagement I can get. I was also wondering if you'd be willing to share my link to some of your friends at work. Husband is in a male-dominated, blue-collar job by the way. The pics I included are to send to them with the link, but don't tell them I'm your mom." And under it was the pictures. There were 3 exposed photos of his mother. And not just exposed in a mirror or pick of the chest kind of photos. They were full-on explicit photos. One of her tied up in BDSM gear, one of her face down butt up on her bed, and one of her with legs spread and a toy halfway in her mouth. My blood was boiling. I deleted what she'd sent, and my husband and I were both silent for a moment. I didn't know what else to say or do, so I broke the silence by asking what now? My husband told me to block his mom on his phone, so I did. I asked if this was something his mom has done before, and he said no. He told me that in the past, she's asked if he wanted to see pictures of the drawings she posed for. He always felt a bit guilty saying no, so he simply didn't respond when she asked, and she never sent it. Then my husband started walking to the bathroom saying he felt sick. While he was in the bathroom, I blocked his mom on my phone as well, including her social medias. When my husband came back out of the bathroom, he called his sister. He asked her if she was with their mom, and when she said no, he explained to her what all had just gone down. His sister was also speechless. Then he asked her not to say anything to other family members right now and explained that neither him or I would be in contact with their mom for a while. He also told her that any time we were home for a visit, he would let his sisters know so that we could plan to see them, but that his mom would not be included in those plans from here on out. My mother-in-law quickly realized that she was blocked on everything by the both of us, and by that night, she had the whole family blowing up our phones asking why. The constant messages haven't stopped, and so far we've just muted our phones as we don't even know what to say. How do you explain that your mother sent you her homemade adult videos? Relevant comments. Commenter: covert incest is a form of non-physical SA. Examples of covert incest could be the parent sharing intimate, graphic details of their own intimate life to the child, practicing voyeurism, exhibitionism, inappropriate sharing of images, and similar behaviors that, while still being SA, are described as covert for their intangible nature. OP, thank you for this comments. I've never heard of that before, but now I know exactly what is going on, and my husband and I both have some reading up to do. Commenter number 2. It would be a good time for your husband to tell your mother-in-law that he's going to take a break from her. An email saying he has wanted to support her in her interests even though they disturb him. This request that she send those personal pictures of herself to co-workers is highly inappropriate whether or not he told them she was a relative. That is his job. Those are unsolicited naughty pictures. They are pictures of his mother which he personally finds disturbing. Those are co-workers who could report him to his superiors. His mother is old enough to know that 1. It's inappropriate to be sharing intimate details with her children unless they have asked her to. 2. Unsolicited intimate content is unsuitable for sharing in general public unless it is acceptable, like Pride Day, a health fair, fetish flea, etc. 3. Soliciting intimate content in the workplace is a potential firing offense. It's time for your husband to be blunt with your mother-in-law and tell her she is deeply disturbing him. OP, my husband is in the military. It isn't just a firing, it's a sharp case with a dishonorable discharge. Update, 15 hours later, many asked for an update, so here is a small one for now. When my husband got home from work today, he did have me recover the messages for evidence should it be needed. I screenshotted the message with timestamps and each of the photos. In the photos, I scribbled over her, not so, private areas as well. After that, I sent the images to my phone and once again deleted the messages from his phone, both in his mother's texts and mine, per husband's request. This was something that several people suggested in the comments of my previous post, and believe me, we were on the same page before I even read them. My husband and I are also regulars in therapy, both individual and couples counseling. When we got married, we agreed that doing counseling from the get-go was a good idea. Not because we have problems in our marriage, but it gives us the tools to confront issues in the future and keeps us on the same page 100% of the time. That being said, I asked my husband if he'd ever mentioned his mother's sexualness in his own therapy. He said no. Since it is how she's always been raised, he saw it as mostly normal. I suggested that this should most definitely be brought up at his next session, and he agreed. I also asked if there was anything that has happened that was a bit overboard in the past. Outside of conversation, he said that his mothers would often come home from work with new lingerie, and she would put it on and wear it around the house for the rest of the night as if they were regular clothes. When she would do this, he would either stay in his room or go to a friend's house because it made him uncomfortable. Several people ask why there hasn't been a conversation about her talking about uncomfortable topics. There has been. When my husband and I were dating, both of us minors, she would talk to my husband about our intimate life explicitly. Some of the questions she's asked him are if he likes girls who are clean-shaven, if him and I were using lube, if I preferred ribbed condoms, if we had tried certain positions, even if I preferred stimulation via clitoris or G-spot. When she would ask these things, my husband simply wouldn't answer with more than I don't know, but eventually he did tell her to stop. He told her that he didn't want to talk about these things with her, that he knew I wouldn't want her talking about those things with her, and that her asking this stuff made him extremely uncomfortable. Her response was to get defensive and act as if she'd been disrespected. She would say that love-making was normal, that she should be able to have these conversations with her son. She even accused him of shaming her sexuality. So, he went back to ignoring the questions altogether. Some suggested that we have an in-person conversation with her about this happening. Not only do we live far away, but we aren't ready for a conversation about it, and we especially aren't ready to discuss it in person. This happened yesterday afternoon. And it will honestly be a very long time before any sort of communication happens with her at all. I did find out what she'd been telling family. She's telling them that she asked if her son supported her, not if he would subscribe and share her content. That is why family has been reaching out and asking why we've blocked her for asking that. We will be telling family exactly what happened, but we aren't quite ready to do so yet, and that will come within the next few days. We're still processing all of what's going on. My husband has a therapy session tomorrow, and we have one together the next day. We will likely wait to talk about this with family until after our sessions. That way we can get our ducks in a row a bit more, and we are even considering legal action. Again, that is something we will bring up with our therapists before continuing. That is the main reason we took screenshot evidence. For those curious, yes, mother-in-law is young. She had my husband at 16 or 17, and we got married young as well. Very common among my family, and in the field of work he is in. And that field of work is the military. So, him sharing his mother's content would heavily affect him. Not just a firing, that would give him a sharp, sexual harassment/assault response and prevention case and a possible dishonorable discharge which would make it extremely difficult to go on after the military. That's all I have for an update right now, but trust that there will be another. Thanks so much for all of the advice and support I received on my last post. I seriously gained such good info from the comments and it's been really helpful. Relevant comments. Commenter, does your husband look like his bio father? OP, actually, crazy that you mention it. My husband looks exactly like his bio dad. I mean down to the hair color, same eyes, and when my husband has facial hair it's seriously uncanny. He even has a similar tattoo in a similar spot that his bio dad had. Of course, we had no idea at the time because my husband's dad walked out when he was very young. But after he'd gotten that tattoo, his mother mentioned that it was in the same spot, and with the exception of a few details, it was practically the same tattoo. Final update, 2 days later, my husband and I have spoken with therapists about the entire situation, and we've drawn a conclusion to how we will handle things. As advised by our therapist, and based on what we've planned ourselves, my mill will be cut off until she does the self-work and is no longer overly sexual towards family. That being said, my husband and I are prepared for her to be cut off permanently. She will likely not attend therapy herself, as she sees it as unimportant. I'm not sure if her opinion comes from her visiting a therapist previously, but she does believe that therapists just tell you everything wrong with yourself and why you need to change. They don't actually try to help your mental health, just make it worse. I'm sure everyone can imagine what has caused her to draw those conclusions. As of now, husband and I will not be pushing legal action. We've decided that for us, at this time, we would prefer to lay down the law in what we feel comfortable with. If that is respected, that is great and nothing more will come of it on our end. If that isn't respected, and there are more attempts to reach us such creating accounts etc., we will most likely seek out a restraining order. As I mentioned in a previous update, I have saved the screenshots from the original issue, so we will have that to present if needed. On to family. As a reminder, husband's side of the family was blowing up our phones asking why we would block mother-in-law. What mother-in-law told them was that we blocked her after she simply asked for our support in the things she's doing. What they didn't know was that she sent photos of herself. We told them, didn't send the photos of course, but did describe them. Things were understood quickly and nothing more was said. I don't know if family has taken it upon themselves to confront mother-in-law about this. If they have, great, she needs it. If they haven't, oh well. Now, from my own perspective, I was raised in a family where everything was very taboo. Lovemaking, sexuality, our bodies, even our periods were difficult to talk about. So much so that when my mom found out I had a crush on a boy when I was 13, I cried and profusely apologized because I thought I would be in a lot of trouble. Asking questions wasn't okay either, so when I did have questions, I couldn't simply ask. For example, I overheard my mom say the word PRN and didn't know what it meant. When I asked my parents what the word PRN was, and I got sent to my room. So, at 7 years old, I grabbed the family tablet and Googled PRN. Saw a bunch of exposed people, got scared, put the iPad back in the living room. When my parents checked the search history that night, I was screamed at and not allowed to touch electronics for the rest of the year. With all of that in mind, a sex-positive family was so incredibly foreign to me. The idea of being able to go to your mom, ask about lovemaking or your body, and have a conversation instead of getting in trouble, was completely new. When my husband and I were dating, I never knew that his mom was going too far. I thought that this simply was sex positivity. Of course, I had intuition that things went too far at times, like when I questioned the toy conversation, but when the response to my questions were she's just really open, I chalked it up to that and didn't really question it anymore. To answer some common questions. My mother-in-law is not this much when it comes to my sister-in-laws. I always assumed it was because they were younger, but the pictures being sent to only my husband really hammered the nail into the covert incest coffin. Come to find out, mother-in-law also isn't quite as open with sister-in-laws. She is open about her own doings, but doesn't meddle in their own like she did my husband. I mentioned before that she would question my husband on our intimate life when we were dating. Another phone call with my middle sister-in-law revealed that she's absolutely never done that to the girls. In fact, there have been times where she's overheard my sister-in-laws saying something about their boyfriends, and she would say, "Eek. Lower your voice, I don't want to know." Whereas she would straight up ask my husband about lovemaking. Another common question was, where's father-in-law? He's never been in the picture. My husband's dad left when mother-in-law was pregnant with her youngest daughter. Mother-in-law also doesn't have a father herself because he left when she was a baby. And, there aren't a lot of men in the family. 2 distant uncles, and a few cousins, but as far as close family, my husband was the only male growing up. And yes, some people got it right. My husband looks exactly like his bio dad. Same build, same hair type and color, same bone structure, same eye shape, even a very similar birthmark. That fact makes this even more gross altogether. And finally, no, we don't have children. However, I have always had concerns about leaving children alone with her because of the openness. I will know when my future children are ready to know about certain topics. Those conversations will come from my husband and I and only us. I've always been concerned that mother-in-law would discard our opinions on that and give our future children the bird and bees talk whenever she felt like. Unless she cannot fix whatever is wrong in her brain, she will not ever be alone with our kids, and even possibly know them. But overall, this is my final in the whole situation. The original post was removed in this sub, so it's been reposted on my personal page for those interested in reading. I'll remain active on this account to answer questions, so if any other questions arise, ask away and I would be happy to answer. Thank you so much to everyone for all of the advice. I didn't even know the term convert incest before posting, and I'm grateful that I do now. It's given my husband and I something to do a little research about, and it's changed our perspective on the past quite a bit. My husband will be taking all of this into therapy more than just his last sessions, and at my next personal session I will likely bring it up too. It's also a topic that will be discussed at counseling together, more than just yesterday's session as well. Again, thank you everyone.